I was standing in the kitchen when they came home, diploma in hand, scholarship letter folded in my pocket. They didn't see me at first. My mother was laughing, her arm looped through my sister Emma's, their heads bent together over something on her phone. My father trailed behind them, carrying shopping bags with the logo of the expensive boutique downtown. Emma had been celebrating her acceptance to the local art school, the one she'd barely applied to, the one that accepted nearly everyone who could pay the tuition. "Olivia?" My mother's voice was flat when she finally noticed me. "You're still here?" I held out the envelope. The thick cream paper, the embossed seal of Westmont University, one of the top engineering schools in the country. Full scholarship, early acceptance. I'd worked for years for this moment. My mother took it without looking at me, glanced at the letter for maybe 3 seconds, and tossed it onto the kitchen table. It landed next to a stack of unopened mail and yesterday's newspaper. "That's nice," she said. "Emma, show your father the dress we got you for orientation." The envelope sat there, one corner dipping into a coffee ring. "Mum," I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. "It's Westmont. We heard you." My father didn't even turn around. He was already following Emma toward the stairs, asking her about Kestia housing options, about whether she needed a new laptop. I picked up the letter. My hands were shaking. 4 years of perfect grades. 4 years of robotics competitions, of staying up until 3 a.m. coding, of working weekends at the library to pay for application fees they'd refused to cover. 4 years of watching Emma get everything. New clothes, a car for her 16th birthday, family vacations I was told we couldn't afford until suddenly we could, as long as I stayed home. "You should be happy for your sister," my mother said from the doorway. She was watching me with something like irritation. This is her moment. Her moment had lasted 6 months. My moment had lasted 3 seconds. I went upstairs to my room, the smallest bedroom, the one that used to be storage, and sat on my bed with the letter pressed against my chest. The house was alive with noise below me. Emma's laughter, my father's booming voice, the sound of champagne being opened. No one came to find me. The numbness started that night. It spread through my chest like frost, turning everything cold and distant. I stopped trying to share my achievements. I stopped expecting them to ask. When the second scholarship offer came, I filed it away silently. When I won the regional science fair, I accepted the trophy and drove myself home, placed it on my desk where no one would see it. Emma's art school orientation was scheduled for the same weekend as my Westmont campus tour. I mentioned it once at dinner. "You can go another time," my mother said, not looking up from her phone. "We need you to watch the house while we're gone." I was 18 years old, 3 months from leaving for college, and they wanted me to house sit while they toured a school 20 minutes away. I stopped talking at meals. They didn't notice. The acceptance that settled into my bones wasn't peace. It was the recognition of something I'd spent years denying. I had never been their daughter the way Emma was. I had been an obligation, a responsibility they'd fulfilled by providing food and shelter. Love was reserved for the child who fit their image, who needed them, who made them feel important. I could have lived with being second. But I wasn't even that. I was invisible. The night before I was supposed to leave for Westmont, my mother knocked on my door. It was the first time she'd entered my room in months. "You're really going?" she asked. I looked at her, at the faint surprise in her eyes, as if my departure had been theoretical until this moment. "Yes," I said. "It's so far away." She sat on the edge of my bed, uninvited. "Emma's staying close. We'll be able to see her every weekend." There it was, the comparison that had defined my entire life. "I'll visit when I can," I lied. "You should think about Emma," she continued. "She looks up to you. She'll miss having you around." Emma had spoken maybe 50 words to me in the past year, and most of them had been requests for me to stay quiet while she was on the phone. "I'm sure she'll be fine," I said. My mother stood, smoothing her skirt. "Well, good luck, I suppose." She left the door open behind her. I finished packing in silence. My room looked the same, with half my belongings gone, sparse, temporary, like I'd never really lived there at all. I took down the science fair trophy, wrapped it carefully, and placed it in a box. No one had ever asked about it anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, except for the sound of Emma's music bleeding through the walls. I lay in bed and thought about the past 4 years, about every small cut, every forgotten achievement, every moment I'd waited for them to see me. The car accident happened on a Tuesday, 3 weeks into my freshman year. I'd been driving back to campus after a required meeting with my academic advisor. The highway was clear, the afternoon sun warm through my windshield. I was thinking about my engineering project, about the equations I needed to solve before class tomorrow. I didn't see the truck until it was too late. The impact was sudden, a wall of sound and force, then spinning, the world tilting sideways. Glass everywhere, metal screaming, and then silence. Not the absence of sound, something deeper, the silence of ending. I felt myself letting go. It wasn't violent or frightening. It was gentle, like falling asleep after being awake for too long. The pain faded first, then the light, then everything. I thought about my mother's face when she tossed my letter on the table. I thought about Emma's dress. The champagne, the unopened envelope next to the coffee stain. I thought about my father's back as he walked away. And then I thought, this is how it ends. Alone. The peace that came with that thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like relief. I woke up in my childhood bedroom. The ceiling was familiar, the water stain in the corner shaped like a bird. The crack in the plaster I'd traced 1,000 times while lying awake. But something was wrong. My body felt different, smaller. The sheets were the blue ones my mother had bought when I was in middle school, the ones I'd thrown out years ago. I sat up slowly. My hands were younger, the scar from the chemistry lab burn gone. The trophy from the science fair wasn't on my desk because it didn't exist yet. My phone buzzed. The old model, the hand-me-down from Emma. The date on the screen made my heart stop. 4 years ago. I was 14 again. The memories came flooding back. Both sets of them. The life I'd lived, the accident, the ending, and now this. A second chance I'd never asked for but somehow been given. I sat very still, processing. This wasn't a dream. The memories were too vivid, too layered. I could remember dying and I could remember being young, and both were equally real. The house was already awake below me. I could hear my mother's voice, bright and warm, as she talked to Emma about her upcoming dance recital. My father was laughing about something. The coffee maker was gurgling. I knew what would happen if I went downstairs. Emma would show them her latest painting. They would praise it, hang it on the refrigerator, take photos. I would mention the math competition I'd qualified for. They would nod absently and tell me not to forget to take out the trash. The pattern had started so early. I'd spent years trying to understand it, trying to fix it. In my first life, I'd believed that working harder, achieving more, being better would eventually make them see me. Now I understood. It had never been about my worth. It had been about their capacity to love more than one daughter, and they'd reached their limit with Emma. I lay back down. The ceiling crack stared back at me. This time, I wouldn't fight for scraps of attention. I wouldn't exhaust myself trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I would focus on myself, on my own goals, and when the time came to leave, I would go without looking back. The pain of my first life had carved something away inside me, all the desperate need for their approval, all the hope that things might change. What remained was clarity. I got dressed slowly, jeans and a plain shirt. Nothing special. My younger face in the mirror was strange, unlined by the years of tension I remembered, but my eyes were different now, older, certain. Downstairs, the scene unfolded exactly as I remembered. Emma was showing them her painting, a watercolour of flowers, technically proficient but unremarkable. My mother was holding it up to the light, exclaiming about the colours. My father was already talking about getting it framed. I poured myself cereal and sat at the table, silent. "Olivia," my mother said, finally noticing me, "don't forget you have that math competition thing on Saturday." "I know," I said. "Well, we can't drive you. We're taking Emma to her dance workshop." In my first life, I'd argued. I'd pointed out that the math competition was important, that I'd been preparing for months. They'd told me to find another ride or miss it. I'd ended up taking 3 buses and arriving late, exhausted and rattled. This time, I just nodded. "Okay." My mother blinked, surprised by my easy acceptance. "Oh, good." I finished my cereal in silence while they continued fawning over Emma's painting. When I left for school, no one said goodbye. The next 4 years unfolded differently. I stopped seeking their attention. I stopped announcing my achievements at dinner, stopped leaving my awards where they might see them, stopped hoping they'd ask about my day. I became a ghost in my own house, present but not participating, there but not belonging. And something strange happened. I thrived. Without the constant weight of their indifference crushing me, I found I could breathe. I joined more clubs, took on bigger projects, pushed myself harder, not to prove anything to them, but because I genuinely loved the work. My grades were perfect. My college applications were flawless. My scholarship essay was about resilience and self-reliance, and it was brutally honest in ways I'd never dared to be before. I watched my family from a distance, as if observing strangers. Emma continued to be their sun, and they orbited her happily. I was a distant moon, cold and separate. They noticed the change vaguely. My mother asked once if something was wrong. "No," I said. "Everything's fine." And it was. For the first time in my life, I wasn't breaking myself trying to fit into their idea of what I should be. When the acceptance letter from Westmont arrived, I collected it from the mailbox myself. I didn't show it to them. I read it alone in my room, felt the quiet satisfaction of achieving something I'd worked for, and filed it away with the others. I received 6 acceptance letters. 5 offered full scholarships. 1 offered a stipend for living expenses. My parents never asked how my applications were going. 3 days before Emma's art school acceptance letter arrived, I already knew what would happen. I'd lived this scene before, so when the day came, when they burst through the door with shopping bags and champagne, when Emma waved her acceptance letter like a flag, I was ready. I was in the kitchen doing homework. My mother barely glanced at me as they flooded in with their celebration. Emma was radiant, flushed with excitement and attention. My father was already on the phone, telling relatives the good news. "Olivia," my mother said absently, "we're having the celebration dinner. You can order pizza for yourself." In my first life, this had shattered me. This time, I just nodded and went back to my calculus. An hour later, after they'd left for the restaurant, all 3 of them, dressed up, leaving me behind, I sat at the empty kitchen table and felt nothing but calm. The next morning, my mother found me packing. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Getting ready," I said. "I leave for campus orientation next week." She stared at me. "What campus? What are you talking about?" I almost laughed. They didn't even know I'd applied to college. They'd been so consumed with Emma's future that mine had never entered their consciousness. Westmont University, I said. I was accepted in December, full scholarship. I start in August, but orientation is next week. My mother's face went through several expressions. Confusion, surprise, and finally something like irritation. You never mentioned this. Yes, I did, several times. Well, I don't remember. Westmont is across the country, Olivia. That's very far. I know. And you're just going? Without discussing it with us? I looked at her directly, letting her see the emptiness in my eyes. There's nothing to discuss. Everything's already arranged. I paid my deposit, registered for classes, set up housing. I'm leaving. But she seemed genuinely flustered now. This is very sudden. I've been preparing for 4 years. My father appeared in the doorway. What's going on? Olivia is apparently moving across the country for college, my mother said, her voice sharp. She didn't think to tell us. I did tell you, I said quietly. You weren't listening. The silence that followed was heavy. I saw the moment they tried to remember, tried to find evidence of the conversations I'd attempted. Maybe they could recall fragments, my voice in the background while they focused on Emma, my words disappearing into the air because they weren't paying attention. Well, my father said finally, I suppose congratulations are in order? The words were empty, an obligation fulfilled. Thank you, I said, and meant it ironically. Emma wandered in, still in her pajamas. What's happening? Your sister is leaving for college, my mother said. Emma blinked at me. Oh, when? Next week. Cool. She grabbed a juice from the refrigerator and left. That was it, the sum total of my family's response to my departure. Confusion from my mother, hollow congratulations from my father, and indifference from my sister. I went back to packing. The morning I left, I carried my bags downstairs alone. My father was already at work. My mother was on the phone with Emma's art school, discussing housing options. Emma was still asleep. I loaded my car, the used sedan I'd bought with money from my part-time job at the library, and took one last look at the house. The small bedroom window on the second floor. The driveway where I'd taught myself to drive, because they'd been too busy teaching Emma. The kitchen where I'd eaten 1,000 silent meals. I felt nothing. My mother appeared at the door as I was getting into the car. You're leaving now? Yes. We didn't even have a goodbye dinner. You were busy. She frowned, uncomfortable. Well, call when you get there. I wouldn't. We both probably knew it. Take care of yourself, she added, and the words sounded rehearsed, something she thought she should say. I drove away without looking back. Westmont was everything I dreamed it would be. The campus was beautiful, sprawling green spaces and modern buildings. My dorm room was small, but mine. My classes were challenging in the best way. I met people who cared about the same things I did, who wanted to talk about engineering and physics and the future. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I called home once in the first month. My mother answered. Oh, Olivia, she said, distracted. How are things? Good. Classes are going well. That's nice. Emma is loving art school. She's already had one of her pieces selected for a showcase. I almost laughed. Even now, even with me gone, Emma was the only daughter worth discussing. I have to go, I said. I just wanted to let you know I'm settling in fine. Okay, call again soon. I didn't. Months passed. I threw myself into my studies, into research projects, into building a life that was entirely my own. I made friends who became the family I'd never had. I found professors who saw my potential and pushed me to exceed it. I was happy. The calls from home stopped after the first few attempts. If they noticed my silence, they didn't push. Emma's showcase was a success. She posted pictures on social media, my parents beaming beside her, proud and present. I wasn't in any of the photos, but then I never had been. It was almost the end of my sophomore year when everything changed. I was in the robotics lab, working late on a project, when my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. I stared at it for a long moment, surprised. We hadn't spoken in 8 months. "Hello?" "Olivia?" Her voice was strange, tight. "We need to talk." I set down my tools. "About what?" "Emma dropped out of art school." I waited, not understanding why this required a call to me. "She's been home for 3 weeks," my mother continued. "She won't leave her room. She won't talk to us. She just gave up." The silence stretched between us. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally. "But I don't understand why you're calling me." "You're her sister," my mother's voice cracked slightly. "We thought maybe you could talk to her." The absurdity of it hit me like a physical blow. They'd ignored me for 18 years, dismissed every achievement, missed every milestone, and now they wanted me to fix their broken daughter. "Mum," I said slowly, "Emma and I aren't close. We've never been close. You made sure of that." "That's not fair. I have an exam tomorrow. I need to go." "Olivia, please, we don't know what to do." The desperation in her voice should have moved me. In my first life, it might have. The old me would have dropped everything, driven home, tried to help. Because that's what family did, even when family had never done the same for me. But I died once already, trying to earn their love. I wasn't going to waste this second life doing the same. "I'm sorry," I said, "but this isn't my problem to solve." I hung up. The guilt tried to find me that night, but it couldn't gain purchase. I'd learned the hard way that guilt was just another chain, another way they kept me bound to a family that had never really wanted me. They called twice more over the next week. I didn't answer. Emma's breakdown became a family crisis that consumed them completely. From what I pieced together from Emma's social media, which I checked occasionally, more out of curiosity than concern, she'd realised that art school wasn't what she wanted, that she'd only gone because our parents had made it seem like the only option, like the natural extension of being their perfect daughter. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma had cracked under the weight of their expectations, just as I had once cracked under the weight of their indifference. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She'd had everything I'd fought for, their love, their attention, their support. If she'd squandered it, that was her choice to live with. The semester ended, summer came. I stayed on campus, working a research assistant position for one of my professors. The work was engaging, the stipend was decent, and the alternative was going home to a family that only remembered I existed when they needed something from me. My father called in July. "Olivia," he said when I answered, "it's been a while." "Yes, we miss you." The lie was so transparent it was almost funny. "What do you need, Dad?" "That's not... Look, we were hoping you'd come home for a visit. Your mother and I have been talking, and we realise we haven't been as present as we should have been. We'd like to make up for that." "I'm working. Surely you can take a few days off." I looked out my window at the campus, peaceful in the summer heat. I thought about my small apartment, my research, my life. I thought about going back to that house, to those people who'd spent years teaching me that my presence didn't matter. "No," I said. "Olivia, I'm not coming home. Not for a visit, not for the summer, probably not ever. You wanted Emma to be your only daughter. Congratulations. You got your wish." "That's not true. We love you both equally." The laugh that escaped me was sharp, bitter. "Don't lie, Dad. It's insulting to both of us." "We made mistakes," he said quietly. "We know that now. But you're still our daughter. You'll always be our daughter." "I was your daughter," I corrected, For 18 years, I was your daughter, and you couldn't be bothered to notice. You don't get to claim me now because Emma fell apart and you finally realised you might have screwed up. Please, I have to go, I said. Don't call again. I blocked their numbers that night, all 3 of them. It felt like cutting away dead weight, like finally letting myself float free of the anchor that had been dragging me down my entire life. Senior year came. My thesis project won awards. I graduated summa cum laude with multiple job offers from top engineering firms. I accepted a position with a company in California, about as far from my hometown as I could get while staying in the continental US. My family didn't attend my graduation. I hadn't invited them. Moving to California felt like shedding a final skin. I found an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the bay. I bought furniture that was mine, hung art that I liked, created a space that had no connection to the house I'd grown up in. My co-workers became friends, my friends became family. I built a life that was so completely, entirely mine that sometimes I forgot about the people who'd given me DNA, but never love. 3 years after graduation, I was promoted to lead engineer on a major project. The announcement was made at a company-wide meeting. Afterward, my boss took me to dinner to celebrate. "You should call your parents," she said over dessert. "Share the good news." I smiled and changed the subject. That night, I unblocked my mother's number on a whim and scrolled through the messages she'd sent over the years. Most were short, impersonal. "How are you?" "Thinking of you." "Let us know you're okay." Never, "I'm sorry." Never, "We were wrong." Just empty words from people who'd suddenly realised they might have failed at something and wanted absolution without accountability. The most recent message was from 3 months ago. "Emma is doing better. She's back in school, studying business this time. We're proud of her. Hope you're well." Of course, Emma was back in school. Of course, they were proud. The golden child always found her way back into the light. I deleted the messages without responding. Life continued. I dated, travelled, took up hobbies I'd never had time for when I was younger. I hiked on weekends and learned to paint, badly but joyfully, without anyone's expectations weighing on me. I published papers in engineering journals. I bought a house. My mother found my address somehow, probably through public records, and sent a card on my 30th birthday. It was generic, the kind you buy at drugstores when you've forgotten someone's birthday. Inside, she'd written, "Thinking of you. Love, Mom, Dad, and Emma." I threw it away without reading it twice. It was 5 years later when the letter arrived. Not a card this time, but an actual letter, multiple pages in my mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away unread. But curiosity won. She wrote about Emma's upcoming wedding, about how she had met someone wonderful and was planning a big ceremony. She wrote about my father's retirement, about their plans to travel. She wrote about how they'd been going through old photo albums and realised how few pictures they had of me, how many moments they'd missed. "I know we failed you," she wrote in the final paragraph. "I know we can't undo the past, but you're still our daughter, and we'd like the chance to know you now, if you'll let us. Emma is getting married in 6 months. She wants you there. We all do. Please consider coming. Please consider giving us another chance." I set the letter down and looked out my window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Emma was planning a wedding. Somewhere, my parents were finally feeling the weight of their choices. Somewhere, they were hoping I'd come back and absolve them of their guilt. The old me would have gone. The girl who died in that car accident, the one who'd spent her whole life fighting for their love, would have seen this as the reconciliation she'd always wanted. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I'd been reborn into someone who understood that some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt, that some distances were too far to close, that some relationships were too broken to fix. I thought about showing up at the wedding, about letting them see who I'd become without them. I thought about the satisfaction of their regret, the power of my indifference. but even revenge felt like giving them too much. I wrote back a single paragraph. I'm glad Emma found happiness. I hope the wedding is beautiful and that your retirement is everything you've dreamed of. But I won't be attending. I've built a good life, one that doesn't have room for people who only valued me when I was gone. I wish you all well, but from a distance, don't write again. I mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, my mother called. I didn't answer. She called again, and again. She left voicemails, tearful, pleading, angry, resigned. I deleted them all without listening past the first few seconds. Emma tried too, sending messages through social media. Please, talk to Mum. She's devastated. We all are. How can you be so cold? I blocked her too. The wedding came and went. I saw pictures on social media before I finally removed them all from my feeds. Emma looked beautiful in white. My parents looked older than I remembered, greyer, smaller. There was an empty chair in the family photos. I felt nothing. Years passed into a comfortable rhythm. My career flourished. I published a book on engineering innovation that became required reading in several universities. I fell in love with someone kind, someone whose family embraced me so completely that I sometimes forgot I'd ever been the daughter left behind. I was 43 when my father died. A heart attack, sudden and final. My aunt, my mother's sister, someone I vaguely remembered from childhood, found me through my publisher and called to let me know. The funeral is on Saturday, she said gently. Your mother asked me to invite you. I can't make it, I said. Olivia, my aunt said carefully. I know there's history, but he was your father. No, I said. He was the man who helped create me. That's all he ever was. I didn't go to the funeral. My mother sent one final letter after that. No return address, just a single page delivered through my aunt. You won, she wrote. I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear, but it's true. You were always the stronger one, the smarter one, the one who didn't need us. And maybe that's why we gravitated toward Emma. She needed us in ways you never did. But we were wrong. We should have celebrated your strength instead of resenting it. We should have been proud instead of threatened. I'm sorry we weren't the parents you deserved. I'm sorry we realized too late what we'd lost. I read it once, then tucked it away in a drawer. She wasn't wrong about me being strong, but she was wrong about me not needing them. I had needed them desperately for years. I'd needed them to see me, to value me, to love me as much as they loved Emma. I just didn't need them anymore. On my 50th birthday, I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine and looked out at the city I'd made my home. Behind me, through the windows, I could hear laughter. My partner, our friends, the family I'd chosen instead of the one I'd been born into. The old wound was still there, a scar across my heart where my parents' love should have been. It would always be there, but it had healed in the shape of strength, of self-reliance, of knowing my worth without needing anyone's validation. They'd tossed my acceptance letter on the table like trash. They dismissed every achievement, missed every milestone, ignored every bid for their attention, and in doing so, they taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that I didn't need them to succeed, to be happy, to build a life worth living. My phone buzzed, a message from my partner. Come back inside, we're about to cut the cake. I took one last look at the city lights, at the life I'd built from nothing but determination and self-belief, and I smiled. Then I went inside to the people who'd chosen to love me, leaving the ghosts of my past where they belonged, behind me in the darkness, unable to reach me anymore.